Is Liz here tonight?
Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of June 18th, 2025. For information on council meetings and how to participate, please visit everettwa.gov City Council. All right, so clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Franklin,
Here.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Fosse.
Here.
Councilmember Bader.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Excused?
Councilmember Tui.
Here.
President Schwab.
Yes, here. Clerk, thank you very much for that. I'd like to ask Councilmember Tui to lead in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me.
Thank you, and I'd like to ask Councilmember Fosse to read the land acknowledgement.
The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Jehob's people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you.
Amen.
All right, so moving on to old business. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for June 11th, 2025?
Councilmember Bader, so moves.
Second.
Motion and seconds been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Well, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, Council President, Council and Community. We are, well, first, happy Pride Month. It's June, and we're extremely excited to have the Love Equally exhibit in the Everett Municipal Building lobby, at least through the end of August. Love Equally commemorates the passage of marriage equality legislation in Washington State through photos, artifacts, and stories of people who stood at the forefront of the LGBTQ+ civil rights. And I really want to thank Secretary of State's office for allowing us to host this really beautiful and amazing exhibit. The Love Equally exhibit is available during our normal business hours, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. Plus, we'll have the building open from 11 to 1 this Saturday for the Pride Block Party. So people can, as they're enjoying our Pride Block Party, they can come in and check out this beautiful exhibit. And as mayor, I want to share with everyone that it's always our goal that Everett is a safe, welcoming, and inclusive place. And unfortunately, we know that's not always the case. And so on behalf of the city, I really just want to express our strong support for our LGBTQ+ community, and I have a proclamation to deliver. Whereas the city of Everett is committed to fostering a community where every person feels safe, seen, and empowered to live authentically. And Pride Month is celebrated each June to honor trailblazers of the LGBTQ+ rights movement, reflect the progress made, and recommit to building a future where all people are free to live openly and authentically. And the celebration honors the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in New York City, a pivotal moment in the ongoing fight for LGBTQ+ rights and equality in the United States. And Pride Month is a time to uplift stories of strength, to affirm the right to love and live fully, and to foster compassionate and welcoming community. And members of the LGBTQ+ community have long been an essential part of Everett's fabric. And we recognize and thank local organizations such as Everett Pride, Snowco Pride, and all others across the region for their dedicated efforts to uplift LGBTQ+ voices, create safe spaces, and foster a sense of belonging for all. And the city of Everett stands in solidarity with the LGBTQ+ individuals who continue to fight for safety, visibility, and equal rights. And we remain committed to creating a welcoming and inclusive community for all. Therefore, be it resolved that on this 18th day of June 2025, I, Mayor Cassie Franklin, hereby proclaim June as Pride Month. Those who live, work, and visit Everett are encouraged to participate in some of the Pride Month events taking place, such as the Everett Pride Block Party on Saturday, June 21st, Snowco Pride in the Park on Saturday, June 28th, and the Love Equally exhibit at the Everett Municipal Building. And we have representatives from Everett Pride here tonight to receive the proclamation. I'd love to invite you forward.
So much.
No, can you press the button on the bottom there?
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all again for allowing us to be here and for delivering the proclamation this year. Again, events are starting on Friday and going all weekend, so we look forward to it. We are busy planning, so we've been, incredibly thankful and grateful for your opportunity to bring this to the city and all of the support you have given us. So thank you all so much.
Thank you both. These two are not just involved in Everett Pride, but they've been involved in pretty much every Pride event across the entire county. And so really thank you for all you do in your leadership. And with that, I have no further comments tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's do public comments, which includes written comments acknowledgement under our rules. Written comments shall be considered in the same manner as oral comments. The person submitting comments must provide their name and city of residence. When comments are required for this to be part of the official council record. Good evening, Angie. And after we do written comments, could we go to our live in person first?
Sure. So we received the following individuals' emails regarding comp plan from Nathan Shelby, Julie Martinson, Alvaro Gillian, and Bobby Thompson. And then for the outdoor multi-use facility, Kathy Hope and Todd Kester. And these were provided to council, legal, city clerk, and administration to be part of the record. So we'll move to public comments in chambers. If Leo could please come to the podium. And if you could please hit the button on the bottom of the mic there and state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Right here.
Yes.
I'm taking a moment. I have not been in this. Hang on a minute. This is going to be a question and answer speech. Cassandra, when was this building built?
Council President, I think I would ask that we remind the speaker this is not a time for question and answer.
Yeah, thank you. Keep in mind, Speaker, that you can share your thoughts, but this isn't a dialogue conversation between the two. So if you're expecting an answer or dialogue, it won't happen here.
So you just want me to say my spiel?
Yeah, that'd be good. I stopped your timer for you, so you can.
Okay, redo the time.
All right, here we go.
None of you people were born in 1955. I was. What do I drive? A 55 T-Bird when I can. Completely restored. And 58 other vehicles this city couldn't afford. This building's not paid for. This building was built for the city of Everett. It still owes money on it. So somebody asked me a week ago, and I was in the Midwest, and I was with a bunch of very important relatives. I want to know how hard it would be to rename Everett what it was named, Port Gardner, not Everett after a little rich kid that ate too much ice cream and vomited the same night in New York City. This is not a New York town. Everybody thinks it is. So I thought I'd never do this in my lifetime. I'm pulling the stakes up and I'm leaving Everett completely. I don't even want to be around Everett. It needs to be renamed Port Gardner because that's what it was named. Money does not change the name to Everett, but it did. What I wanted for my birthday present in I got to think, what year was that? I wanted to come to the city council meeting. I had to get all dressed up, and Henry M. Jackson brought me here. And he said, sit and learn. And I go, well, all those guys are dead and women. What? Now I make a proposal. There's 3 proposals. They're great. If I was the mayor, I'd see that they're done, but I'm not the mayor. I never will be the mayor of this hay town. I call it a hay town. It's gone backwards. We're in debt, I heard, $30 million backwards or more. In the Dakotas, Everett's the laughing stock of their fun and games. And I stick up for Everett. And they said, they got a lady mayor. I said, she's a pretty damn good one. And I said, it's those exact words. And my cousin is the mayor of a town in the Dakotas. He says, a woman will never run this town. I said, guess what? She's better than you. He got mad at me. He stuck up for you. He knows who you are. Never met you, but I know you, right?
Okay, finish up, please.
Oh, am I killing time again?
Yep.
So I think I'm gonna stick around and watch the fall game of the fallout, what's gonna happen in the next 6 months to the city of Port Gardner. I want it changed back to Port Gardner, what it was supposed to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo. Appreciate it. All right.
I'm out.
If Russell could please come to the podium and followed by Daniel, please state your full name and city residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, Russell Joe, Master Builders, located in Bellevue. Appreciate the opportunity to address you. I'm following up on my public comment to the Planning Commission on 6/3, the council public comment on 6/11. I think I sent a couple of letters to you on 6/9 and 6/16 that I hope you've looked at. We're asking that the final Everett 2044 plan not include EMC 1909, the inclusionary zoning. However, if the council does seek to discuss it and wants to implement it, we'd ask that it be reviewed in 3 years and or sunset in a 5-year time period. And I hope that council will take some time to discuss those things. We're asking for this because your housing element has some goals in there, which you want to encourage development of 38,000 diverse housing units. And goal 2 is that you want to make housing available to rent at prices affordable to all economic segments. Those are both fantastic goals. As you know, we are in a housing shortage, and we need to find a way to create more housing choices and more housing options. More available homes gives the buyers and the renters more leverage and power when they're trying to find a place to live. However, we assert that inclusionary zoning will run counter to that and do the opposite. It'll make fewer projects feasible for our builders, and fewer homes will be built overall. This will constrain the available home choices. Because supply is reduced, prices will rise. If prices rise, it's partially because the city will be imposing a tax on housing. When you impose a tax on something, less is produced and the price of it goes up. We think that those are counter to your goals of keeping the area free from gentrification and to help preserve that area's cultural heritage and the important things that make it a special place. However, IZ will make the housing shortage further go into a deficit. And with this goal in mind, we hope that affordable housing would mean affordable at all income ranges, just as your goal stresses. That can include the 60 to 80% people that live and work in fire and police and our hotels. That would give them the opportunity to live here, rather than affordable housing that is mandated at 60 to 80%. We'd hope that you would adopt the recommendation from the Planning Commission, which excludes inclusionary zoning. In the alternative, adopt a resolution that would in part look at this again in 3 years and sunset it after 5 years, as is a good policy when you're trying to implement new policy such as IZ. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, if Dan could please come to the podium. Dan, yes. And please state your full name, city residence, and you have 5 minutes.
Good
to
evening. My name
speak.
is Daniel Dodson. I want to thank Councilmember Schwab for allowing me 5 minutes to speak. I would ask, were you able to get the attached, the printed out and so?
No, I was not able to access that link.
Very good. All right. So I'd like to ask them, the council, just give me a little bit of grace and can I come back next week and come prepared that the council has everything. If I can do that, would that be great?
Yes, if you could provide the documents, I can share them with council.
Bet, yeah. So I rushed today to try to get something out, and I appreciate you so much for helping me get on the agenda. Thank you very much for giving me the time. I will look forward to seeing you all next week, and I won't take any more of your time. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bobby, if you could please come to the podium
It's traffic.
and please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Bobby Thompson. I'm the executive director of the Housing Consortium of Everett and Snohomish County. I'm also an Everett resident, living on 10th and Colby. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the inclusionary zoning provisions in the Everett Comprehensive Plan you just heard mentioned. Inclusionary zoning is a vital anti-displacement strategy for communities in South Everett that are experiencing some of the highest rates of housing insecurity in the state of Washington. The Housing Consortium and our partners have been working with community-based organizations to listen to residents and community members, and the message is clear, and you've heard it from them. People want to stay in their neighborhood and preserve the cultural spaces and small businesses that define their community. I understand the concerns that inclusionary zoning could limit new housing supply and increase rents. However, the most recent and comprehensive national research referenced today in the materials I sent each of you demonstrate that well-designed programs like Everett's will not reduce housing production or raise rents. In fact, what it does while it stabilizes rents is it raises home values by 2.1%. The proposal before you has been crafted to reflect these best practices. It's modest, it's flexible, and it's in line with programs in nearby areas like Linwood and unincorporated Snohomish County, less than a half-mile away. It exempts the smaller development projects from these standards. And for those that participate, it includes incentives like upzoning and property tax exemptions. Most notably, it will be paired with major transit investment in the form of light rail and enhanced swift bus service. This policy should be monitored and it should be adjusted over time. And we encourage a strong commitment to evaluation at the state mandated 5-year check in 2029. But today I urge you to adopt this proposal without watering it down and without adding a sunset clause. If Everett doesn't act now, the city will be subject to default state mandates for inclusionary zoning in 2029. Mandates that take away all your flexibility and offer fewer local benefits, including the ability to exempt smaller development projects. This is a landmark opportunity. With this policy, Everett can grow without displacing the people who already call it home and those that have been historically marginalized in planning processes. Please support inclusionary zoning and take this step towards a more equitable, vibrant city. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our speakers on Zoom. We'll start with Madeline. And if you could share your camera or turn your camera on and state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Madeline Shepherd. I live in Everett. I would like to say, please approve the amendment to keep parcels north of 19th Street and east of Rockefeller Avenue as neighborhood residential and not change them to UR4. For us in that area, like on Hoyt Avenue, that would allow us time to create a historic overlay. It prevents jeopardizing contributing historic structures. I urge you to please approve that and thank you.
Thank you. Next, if Sabrina could please turn your camera on if possible, and when you're ready, state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Sabrina Lehman. I live in Everett, Washington, and I am speaking on the Everett 2044 plan. I've been able to review the materials on the neighborhood residential commercial overlay and the changes that were proposed in last week's meeting and the proposed changes in the development regulation.
I had to totally. Did I sound okay? Yeah. Could you hear me?
Yeah. Go on. What's happening now?
I'm sorry. Hello?
1 moment. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I didn't know if it was on my end.
He's got the timer.
Okay, you can go
No
ahead.
worries. I want to thank the council for considering the changes that were proposed last week and also including in the definition the commercial neighborhood overlay. And I support that for the final plan. I know there's been conversation about expanding the commercial overlay. And I would just suggest in looking at RCW 3670A020, the goal in the Washington Growth Management Act is to reduce sprawl and to really focus on the urban growth. So the way that this council has proposed the neighborhood commercial overlay reflects the intent of the Washington State statute. And I appreciate the time that it took through committee to get that put together. Again, I thank all of you, like I did last week, for your patience and your listening skills. I'm super impressed by that. And given all of the feedback you've gotten, I really thank you guys.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comments.
Okay, thank you very much. So on to council comments. We'll begin with Council Vice President Zarlingo.
Yep, no comment or report this week.
Okay, Councilmember Fossey.
It was yesterday, I was able to attend the Snohomish County elected officials reception by the master builders talking about housing, and with my colleague here, Councilmember Bader was there. And that was a nice refresher on the importance of building housing that we need for our community. I wanted to give a heads up that the Link Light Rail will be suspended between Capitol Hill and Soto this weekend. So if anyone's taking a trip down there, they'll have buses, but they're doing some rail repairs. So just putting that notice out there. And with regards to Pride, congratulations on your resolution, Everett Pride. I know Councilmember Vogely and myself both had made contributions from our ARPA allotment to help with these festivities, and really excited to be a part of that this weekend. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. It's good to be with Councilmember Fossey. She at the Master Builders event yesterday. She probably got a lot more out of it because I had to leave early for a library board meeting. Library board is reviewing its policies that they have on many things, whether it's patron behavior or how what they add to the collection, whole range of things. And so that'll be going forward over the next few years, kind of in tandem, I think, with their strategic plan. So anyhow, I think we'll probably get a periodic report on that. I don't think there's going to be anything earth-shaking in the policies, but after a decade or more, some of these policies, they recognize it's time to review them and check them. The other thing from 2 weeks ago, and I didn't report this last week to save us time, but Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Committee had an interesting report from Tacoma on a program called Home in Tacoma. And I need to send my colleagues a link for that, but it was a very interesting report, and I'll try to get around to that tomorrow. And if you have time to look at the PowerPoint on that, I think it was an interesting effort that Tacoma has made trying to expand or help fill the missing middle housing. So anyhow, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Been busy as always, but in the interest of time, just wanted to say happy Juneteenth, and I look forward to seeing everybody at Pride this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that the Monte Cristo Award nominations, our deadline is June 30th. So if you're out and about in your neighborhood, you see someone, the categories are green gardening, neighborhood friendly business, pride of the neighborhood, and rejuvenation and transformation are the 4 categories. And be sure you take a photo when you submit your nomination. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, how about administration?
No report tonight.
Okay, our city attorney.
No report, no executive session.
Okay, so we'll move on to our consent items. We have 7 of them, 1 through 7. They're before you.
Move to approve the consent items.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion and second's been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to our briefing. Our first briefing is item number 8. Adopt a resolution establishing prohibited areas related to the areas of drug trafficking. And we will take action on 6/25.
I will beg a moment so I can get our presentation started, but glad to be back before council. Lacey Offit, appearing on behalf of the City Attorney's Office. And with me tonight for briefing, I have Sergeant Bennett of the ACT team, and I have Sergeant Wallace, who is the CRT sergeant, who will be assisting with my briefing. And if I could just have a moment to make sure that I'm sharing my screen properly, we will get underway. So far, so good. Only I could find the. Yeah. Am I missing it?
Yes, Bobby, it's because it's high.
Ah, there it is. It was hiding. Sorry about that. Okay, nothing like starting off with a few technical difficulties. As I said, council members, I'm here to brief you on the soda area resolution. As you are no doubt aware, the EMC 1013 requires this body to adopt a resolution reestablishing soda areas every 2 years. So you've seen me here before. I'm here again for 2025 and will invite Sergeant Bennett to go through some of the slides that have been provided to council in advance that support the recommendation that the police department is making for council tonight. So Sergeant Bennett. I'm going to try and run the slideshow from behind.
Evening. So just to touch base, kind of a little backstory on what we use to develop our recommendation for this. So the slides are going to cover several things. They're going to cover drug overdose data from the last couple of years, drug arrest data, so actually arrests for drug-related crimes for the years of 23 and 24. They'll also cover substance calls for service. So those will be like 911 calls or potentially self-initiated officer contacts that had a substance nexus to them. And then we also touched kind of on the parks. I know parks was brought up the last time we reviewed this. So we'll kind of touch on some of the park data for you guys to see. In addition to those, both Sergeant Wallace and I both supervised uniformed units that spend our time proactively patrolling the city. We also both receive the crime tips that aren't coming through 911. So that could be emails to city administration. It could be emails that come straight to our units. It could be emails that are tip lines. Also could be complaints from businesses and community members that we have contacts with. And then basically on top of that, just our own observations of what we're seeing when we're out patrolling and then what we're gaining from interviews with people that we're contacting. So the first slide, I know overdoses came up last time we did this too. So we included overdose data for the last several years. This just shows the overdoses that were fatal and non-fatal for 21 and 22. The boxes that you see are the current soda zones that are kind of overlaid. So you can kind of see where the bullet points line up with the zones that we already have established. You go on there. This shows 21, 22, and 23 combined. Uh, 2022, it says it separated out for what was fatal and those and then the total overdoses that were non-fatal. And of course, these are only what is reported. So these are the ones that either police responded to or fire responded to. Obviously, overdoses that are happening where people are resolving it themselves or getting medical treatment on their own. We're not able to capture that data. For 2023, the total went up, the fatal went up, fortunately not as much. And then for 2024, we saw our fatal go largely down as well as our total overdoses. And it doesn't show it on that last slide, but for the most part, they still do line up in the boxes. They're just not overlaid. So drug and narcotic violation arrests, for the most part, these arrests are going to come from either loitering for the purpose of engaging in drug-related activity, possessing a controlled substance, or knowing or using a substance where it's actually observed by an officer. This just captures the north area. The large box that you can kind of see that runs north to south is Broadway, and then the downtown area is kind of that larger horizontal. Wiggums Hollow is the upper right box, and then Jackson Park is kind of that box that's closer to I-5 along the river. Those were added last time. This is kind of covering the central and south. So again, the larger box kind of running vertically is Evergreen Way. You can see Everett Mall Way kind of running east to west there down at the bottom, and then West Casino Road is up there at the top running horizontal. This just captures the numbers. So again, this is for 2023 and 2024, a total of 1,784 narcotic violation arrests. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that it changed. My apologies. So this is substance use. So this could be 911 calls that came in for some sort of substance related concern. These again could also be self-initiated officer contacts, but they didn't all necessarily result in arrest. This shows the city parks. Unfortunately, it doesn't overlay with the soda zones, but some of the city parks are obviously outside of that. I believe the next slide is the one that shows the actual data at the different parks. Unfortunately, that box is really, really small. So if someone has a particular question, I can go up and read it. But the one at the top is in the 50s. That's Clark Park, which is currently covered within our established soda zones, as are, I think, the top 3 are all covered in the soda zones, and the rest of them all are down to like 2 and 3 arrests. And based upon everything, so our current recommendation is going to be to keep the majority of the soda zones that are already established. Our recommendation is going to be adding 1 new zone and removing 1 from our current list. And Sergeant Wallace is going to talk a little bit about that.
So the zone that we would like to recommend to include would be the 1,000 block of North Broadway to East Marine. It was previously in the soda area years ago, but it was taken out. We've seen an increase. My team especially have seen quite an increase in narcotics complaints in that area, and quite a few complaints from business owners and people living around there. Kind of an example of what we're seeing happening there is recently my team made a low-level kind of drug investigation that led us to more of a dealer or trafficker. And through communicating with him, he agreed to sell us some narcotics. And then it came as a real surprise to us when he suggested the location of the Everett Community College. And I think having that soda zone extended that way would stop some of that from happening as well. And then another recommendation is to remove Wiggums Hollow Park. If you look at the data, Wiggums Hollow Park and Jackson Park kind of have similar numbers. However, working the street and being there with it, we're not seeing the activity at Wiggums Hollow. However, we are seeing the activity still at Jackson.
So council, to summarize, the recommendation from the police department supported by the city attorney's office is to keep the majority of the soda areas exactly the same. 2 differences, 1 recommendation to remove Wiggums Hollow Park based on the lack of kind of on the ground activity that's related to narcotics trafficking in the city. And the other would be to add back in a section of North Broadway that was, hopefully we had removed it in the hopes that what we were seeing was a long-term trend. That turned out not to be true based on Sergeant Wallace's team's observations up there in the last couple of years. So recommending adding that portion back in. Any other of the zones, I can slide back to a visual of what those zones are there in the red. The rest of those zones we're recommending to stay the same. And at this time, I'll open it up for questions. I can help answer any questions with relation to kind of the law or some of the history. And I have both sergeants who might be able to answer some questions should you have them about what's happening on the streets in the city.
Councilmember Zorzingo.
Reference to the last slide with the arrests in the parks. I was looking at Front and Sullivan Silver Lake Park. Looks to me from your prioritization list that is a significant number of arrests, but it falls below the levels at which you're recommending the soda zones, that the other ones are slightly higher.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
It sounds to me like that, though larger than some other smaller arrest sets, is still a little bit below your threshold for the soda zones.
So you're asking about Silver Lake?
Front and Sullivan Silver Lake Park, yeah, south end there.
Yeah. It's hard to see because it's just the addresses up there. But if I'm correct in looking at this, Silver Lake is maybe.
Oh, is it two? I guess I thought it was
one or
three.
two.
Oh, okay.
For the last couple of years, and so it falls so far below.
No, that's actually reassuring. I was misreading the number. I need
Okay.
to get my eyes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Lacey, obviously I heard your presentation when we had the committee hearing, and while I couldn't come up with any other data to ask for, I still am really troubled by the numbers of arrests, et cetera, just south of downtown Everett to about 35th, and just north on both sides of Broadway there, especially somewhat concerned given being in Riverside neighborhood. It seems like we're starting to get a cluster around the old Perpetual Help Church, where they have several social services offered there. And finally, down along 3rd Avenue Southeast between Everett Mall Way and Evergreen Way. And I know, obviously, you guys have made it clear we can't have soda zones throughout. I mean, everywhere. The whole city can't be a soda zone. But those stand out much more than, say, Casino west of where it would intersect with Seaway Boulevard if it ran through, or even downtown east of McDougal in the current zone. So I guess I would I won't be here next week. I'll be at the Association of Washington Cities meeting, but I'd encourage us when this comes up for action next week, if at all possible, to really consider including those, because especially those, I think those, we've heard from folks repeatedly south of downtown about the challenges they have. And I would encourage us, if at all possible, if at all legally justifiable, to consider expanding those zones, especially that last one. Thanks.
Certainly, I'd be happy to take that under advisement with the sergeants and discuss expanding some of those areas and taking a closer look at that data.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our second briefing. Item number 9, authorize the mayor to sign a third amendment to the amended and reinstated Riverfront property disposition agreement in the form of substantially as provided. The action will be June 25th, 25. And Jennifer, do we have presentation?
Yes, Director Stevens watched us, signed up for this one too, and so he has that briefing for you.
Thank you.
Council President, Council Mayor, I'm York Stevens Wachta, Planning Director. Item 9 is an amendment to the 2019 Riverfront amended and restated property disposition agreement. This agreement is one of several agreements between the city and the developer, which is currently Shelter Holdings, that govern the Riverfront development. These agreements govern 6 phases of development on the central portion, also known as the landfill site. Most of the first phase is complete. On that former landfill site, the property disposition agreement currently requires the first phase to be completed by July 1 of 2025. The first phase includes 2 mixed-use buildings. Those are complete. A public plaza, which is complete. a first phase parking lot, which is complete, a first phase park project, the Eclipse Mill Park, which is under an amendment approved by the council in 2024, due 18 months after the city completes its portion of the park, which we are working on, and we anticipate that the 18 months after the city's portion to be in 2026 or 2027. And then the fifth one is why we're here today, a grocery store. Shelter has been working hard on trying to attract a grocer to the Riverfront, especially one that would fit well with the community and be an asset to Everett, and has had difficulty finding a suitable partner there. And so Shelter has requested that the grocery store deadline be extended for 5 years to allow for more residential buildings to be built and population density to increase. Of course, the more customers you have, the more interested any sort of a commerce would be. So the proposed amendment before you will acknowledge the current deadline for the park project and the already completed first phase elements, and will extend the deadline for the grocery store by 5 years to July 1 of 2030. The extent of the briefing, be happy to take any questions, and I believe we have representatives from Shelter here as well.
Yes, I'll just start off with a question. How many more housing units is there in the plan to build on that, on the Riverfront area? Are we at the cap at this point?
You got me on the first question. Eric Evans with Shelter Holdings has been the managing this project.
For the benefit of the record, my name is Eric Evans, Shelter Holdings, 11624 Southeast 5th Avenue, Bellevue, Washington, 98005. It's great to be in front of all of you again. Welcome. Thanks for all your service. Nowadays, it seems like I should start all answering questions that way because it's a lot of work and it's very much appreciated. There are 1,250 units approved under the development agreement. There are 300 residents to date up at Riverfront.
Okay, so there's 1,250 units that are
The
approved?
development agreement authorized 1,250
Units.
residences.
And how many have we have built so far?
There are 300.
Units, okay, because you said residents, but you're saying 1,250 versus 300 so far.
So far, there's 300 completed
All right.
residents.
And what is your plan to complete the 1,250?
So currently, the city has granted permits for an additional 160 units. If you go out there now, you'll see pile driving going on to support the next building. Permits are also in for another 150. So those we hope will be issued shortly. So that will complete all of the residential on the west side of Riverfront Boulevard, and that'll be 600 residents. And then on the other side, they're in plan for another 650 approximately.
Thanks. Any other questions? Council members,
Well, you know, by coincidence, later on this evening, we're going to be talking about neighborhood commercial and small scale stores and that sort of thing and the walkability of it all. And I guess I understand that the major grocery stores may be looking for a bigger core of residents before they put in a store. I wonder, are there interim, smaller scale, convenience store-ish kinds of things that you could encourage or facilitate in the meantime to make it easier for those 300 some, the current residents to shop?
Yes.
Okay.
We own approximately, in those 300 residents, approximately 30,000 square feet of additional retail inline. And that is also being marketed by Real Retail for just those types of uses.
Okay.
We maintain all of the parking and all of the buildings. So it would be great to have tenants who also pay and contribute to those things. So we're very, very motivated to bring those types of businesses, whether they be 3,000 square foot community grocers, places where you can grab a sandwich. We also operate with the support of the city in terms of introductions to the Washington Food Truck Association. We will operate a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday food truck out there, and the residents can stop by. All of you, I'd appreciate you do. It takes about $120,000 for a little person to operate a food truck. So, and you know that they report their sales, and to the extent they get over $1,200, they want to come back. So, anything we can to bring activity to the Riverfront.
Please be sure to, I'm sure you do, but please be sure to share that with our team so that we can distribute it as widely as possible. We love to advertise things like that are going on in the city. And so if we, good communication back and forth will help spread the
Absolutely.
word.
Thank you.
Yeah, it strikes me that until, for example, the pickleball comes in, there's such a tendency, I think, for the rest of Everett to not necessarily notice that chunk of Everett that's on the east side of I-5.
Yeah, I was out at the Lowell Community Association and handed out flyers, and we met with the hospital and trying to get nurses there. And we even asked the Everett School District if they might want to hold the band and entertain. So anything we can make the community more vibrant and get more activity, it helps retailers take the step and decide to open their business. Building up to the election, there was a lot of stress in the business community, taking a step to invest. After the election, we saw a little bit of more confidence in the retail community. We've seen a little bit more activity, including some of the grocers that we all desperately want there. There's a little uncertainty now in the news, but we're hopeful that everyone continues to work farther and together, and we'll have more to report in 60 days.
Councilman Bader. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. I've been a long time. I've been on this journey with you guys since 2012 or so. And obviously the image for retail was that we had a decade plus ago was much different than now. And I get that it's tough and, the reality down there, and to any extent that it's, because the city hasn't approved enough construction permits or whatever for you, I wouldn't want to hold you to that, but is the reality in retail and going forward that we're really not going to see a grocery store down there? I mean, it seems like retail is so different than it was and what we envisioned. I guess I'd rather just have Shelter be straightforward with us that the retail world is so changed that the chances of even at build out having any significant amount of retail down there is limited. I don't necessarily know you can speak to that now, but I just wouldn't want to be here 5 years from now faced with another request for an extension because we didn't deal with the reality that retail is different than it was, and it's in the wake of Amazon and so many other trends. It's just not going to be where we hoped it might be for that development.
I appreciate that. I guess I would say that we're very, very committed to bringing the retail. We've invested a significant amount of money with inline retail and pads for these uses. I would say I was a lot younger when we started. I agree. I would say that part of the success of Everett and our project is that we've worked together and we've adapted to changing times. I can't tell you what 5 years is going to be like. I still can't figure out whether I'm going to pay a lot of tariffs on steel pipes today or whether I'm going to pay a whole lot more for cabinets. But if we work together and adapt to the changing environment, we end up with good results. And so that's what I hope to not be back here in 5 years either on a grocer. We're gonna make every effort to make it happen, but that's my message. We work together, we find solutions together, and we get a good outcome. And I see that in the other documents that you're trying to advance forward today in terms of planning commission and the 3 years that you've all invested to get here. And we work together, it tends to come out with good outcomes. At least it has for us.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yurick, any more on this presentation? Good.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay, and we'll be voting on that on June 25th. So, all right. So right now we're going to take a 5-minute recess before we go to action items 10, 11. Okay, welcome back. I appreciate everyone's patience. We're on to action item number 10. Council Bill 2505-36, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance adopting the Everett 2044 comprehensive plan. And I would like a motion and a second before we have discussion.
Councilmember Ryan moves.
Now we have a motion.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on item number 10. Any discussion? Councilmember Zerlingo.
I just would like to understand the structure of our voting tonight and the amendments and the two motions we have, or the two items we have on our agenda, so that I understand how we coordinate and discuss these things and settle on the amendments.
Okay, so point of clarification, if we could have Yurick discuss the difference between 10 and 11, please. Do we need, I guess the question would be, do we need a motion to do both of them at the same time so we can have open amendments, or yeah, please discuss.
If that, does that work to amend them interchangeably, or should we do development regulations then comprehensive plan? Okay.
Okay.
We can do
Well-
development regulations first and then comprehensive plan?
Okay, so your request is that we do item number 11 first.
Yeah, no, let's do the comprehensive plan first.
Okay, and then City Attorney David Hall, if you would step in, if we are discussing something that should be in 11, will you let us know? I'm sure.
I will.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so back to item number 10. I'm pardon, do we have a question?
Just curious if there's a presentation first.
I think staff has information about
Oh, we
amendments
do.
that have come up since the last full package was received and given to the council and the public. And so Yorick could walk through some of those. And I think there's others that folks have come up with in the last 24 hours that we can also discuss, but he's got great things that might help you walk through those first few changes at
Okay.
least.
So we'd like to do discussion, and what you have before us is a list of potential amendments.
Correct.
Okay.
We're all out of original material here, so all of this is responding to council members who have passed along amendments that they intend to propose. So if you have changed your mind since then, apologies for the slides, but we've got slides just so that we're all clear on what those are, and we can jump ahead past the development regulations to the comprehensive plan ones.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Which I believe are Councilmember Ryan. And Councilmember Ryan had passed along a couple of proposed amendments to the transportation element policies, and then two suggestions that would be a good fit for actions in the comprehensive plan. Actions are discrete work program items that staff will undertake within the next 5 years. And I handed out a list of what those actions are. There's maybe 18 of them throughout the different elements of the plan. But we can start with the policies. I don't know if Councilmember you wanted to speak to them first, but up on top, we have the words that Councilmember Ryan provided, and we found a way to fit those into some similar policies, kept the meaning of what Councilmember was looking for without adding a whole new policy, but folding it into a similar policy. So the request here was to require transportation demand management strategies at new development to minimize parking needs and single occupancy vehicle driving. Working with Public Works today, we suggest modifying TR8, policy TR8 in the transportation element to add reference to transportation demand management strategies. This policy already talks about incorporating transit and pedestrian supportive and oriented design features through development review. And I will show how this is actually in code already. In a way, we require transportation demand management plans, and there have been some minor amendments to that in the proposal. New construction of a principal building in excess of 50,000 square feet of gross floor area, or substantial renovation to the same involving a change of use, or any development with a reduction of parking allowed pursuant to 1934-060A, which is a parking study by a qualified professional. So when we see a permit come in for a large building or for a use that is requesting a parking reduction with a parking study, we require a transportation demand management plan, and there are some required aspects that needs to be provided by a professional in transportation planning. And I say this just as an example of what this policy would mean, and the regulations can modify over time in keeping with the comprehensive plan. Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay. The next one was a suggestion to grow transit into a well-integrated network of fast, frequent, and reliable service for most people, especially for trips to and from downtown and other activity centers and trips generating sites within the city and region. There's another policy about transit, number TR15 in the transportation element, and it seemed like a good fit to incorporate this suggestion into that policy, which would then read, maintain transit service as a viable mode of travel to and from downtown and other activity centers within the city and region, and grow transit into a well-integrated network of fast, frequent, and reliable service for most people. Prioritize transit and other transportation services to trip-generating sites in Everett. These amendments make the policies a little bit longer, but that is just fine, I think. And then under parking policies, encourage use of transportation demand management strategies to right-size parking. Likewise, we have a policy in the same general area that could be reworded to say, encourage the use of transportation demand management strategies and the use of and shared use of parking and vehicles to right-size parking and maximize the efficient use of limited urban space. And then finally, under level of service standards policies, once again, saw an opportunity to incorporate this suggestion, the request, into a policy that would read, design and operate streets to be inherently safe for all users in the goal of eventually eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries by implementing projects, programs, and strategies on local streets to prioritize safe driving, walking, and cycling by calming traffic and limiting vehicle speeds, especially near schools and colleges. Under actions, this would be in the design and development element, which includes the historic preservation policies. There would be an action added, work with the Historic Commission and Planning Commission to develop recommendations for City Council consideration for design requirements for new construction of large buildings abutting historic overlays. That's a little bit, want to see if that's a friendly amendment to the council member's suggestion, which had some zones, MU, UR4, or UR7 zones, and specified multifamily construction projects. Those are things we can definitely continue to take into account in that project. And then last, this would be a report on the use of neighborhood commercial framework and any recommended changes to the Planning Commission and City Council by January of 2027. So a monitoring and report back on how neighborhood commercial worked. We do have Public Works and Transit staff here. Tom Hood and Sabina are here in case there are questions on the transportation side. Shall I go back to any of them?
Questions, anyone? I have, could you go in a little more depth into the, I guess what you have, the last one here, the staff suggestions?
Yes.
Give me a little more in depth on how that would affect change in what we have currently.
Yeah, so this would just be in 18 months, which is January 2027, we would be asked to report back to the council on how neighborhood commercial went, how many applications we've had, how many buildings have been built or converted, what the uses were, and any suggestions that staff or the planning commission would have for improvements to the framework. So it would not change how it works. It would just ask staff to come back to the council with a report on how it had gone for the first 18 months.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
A question, in bringing forth a new business, there are some that start and then don't complete, get partway through the process, run into rocks in the road or difficulties. And I guess my thought is maybe one of the most useful things that might come out of contacts you have are difficulties or things that have stalled or stopped. And I wonder if there's a way, because I've worked on a couple of those for constituents, and I realize sometimes there are things that we didn't realize one way or another we were putting a rock in the road somehow or causing a problem, or we weren't facilitating something that we could have. Is there a way in that 18-month time frame, because I think that would be a good enough time frame, is there a way for us from your permitting departments, and maybe I could needle some friends on the health district, for example, as well, to capture what those difficulties are? Because that may be our highest leverage, is in finding the things that never made it or wouldn't have otherwise made it to a real business.
Yeah, I think that would be difficult to do for everything, but for a defined thing like neighborhood commercial, I think that's instructions that we could pass around to staff I mean, we always pay attention and I think could, from memory, talk about some common issues, but that could be a specific ask when dealing with any of these. If they never come to the city, obviously we wouldn't know, but if they got partially down the line.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, I just have a question on the 18 months. That seems like a pretty tight window. I know how long it can take, we pass the plan, and then to imagine that in 18 months, we suddenly have any, maybe we have one or two. I can't imagine there being enough data. And so I'm wondering if that is very important, because I hate to burden staff with a report to council when there's nothing to report and we're scrambling to, try to come up with information, whereas maybe if we gave it 2.5 years or a little bit more of a time window, there might be more content for council. So
Sure, I would think my vision, maybe report is a bit of a strong labor intensive type of word. A memo, I think, would be fine. I do think it'd be great to hear like anecdotally as well, when we were going through the permitting process, these 5 applicants, weren't able to land it because of XYZ, so that it would give us some policy ideas on how to strengthen the neighborhood commercial framework. So yeah, report might be a little bit, I don't need a chart and a graph unless there is like adequate data for it. A memo saying we've only had 2 applicants and we don't have anything to report on would be fine as well. So, but just that feedback. And additionally, if there is a report that would be provided anyways during that time about the comprehensive plan. So I was seeing that would be in alignment with just staff kind of reviewing all of the comprehensive plan and pulling out the data or lack thereof for commercial framework in that time frame.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's practical if the staff who encounter some of these applications just make a side note of those, and especially if they're having any difficulties. And in a sense, it also would be nice because sometimes those people end up before us here making a complaint in public with the difficulty they're having. And I know that staff is working hard on this, so I'd like to intercept whatever it is, because sometimes I'd get a call from such people as well. And I'd hope wherever possible that results in an actual successful business.
Just point of order, we don't have any kind of motion or anything, so. Okay, have questions anymore about the language? Yeah, Councilmember Fossey.
Would it just, is report more formal than like an update to council?
Allison had a good suggestion that if just by dropping the words prepare a report, it just say report on. And I think the word report could be anything from something less than you would be looking for. I mean, we'll try to get it just right, but it wouldn't prescribe any sort of format.
Any questions about the presentation on potential actions?
Is it appropriate at this point to say make a motion on this specific item?
It would be.
Okay, I don't want to steal your thunder, Councilmember Ryan, since you proposed it. Okay, I will move that I'm moving to amend the proposed comprehensive plan to require, or to say report on the use of the neighborhood commercial framework and any recommended changes to the Planning Commission and City Council by January 2027.
Councilor Ryan seconds.
Are you suggesting that we include all the staff suggestions or just the one on the slide?
This one right here.
Okay. Okay.
When we see on the screen.
All right.
Sorry. Because I don't.
Motion and seconds been made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay. We're getting somewhere. All right. So is there any more, I mean, we don't have to make any action on any of these at this point, but it might be a good time. Is there any, Councilmember Fosse, did you have,
I think Councilmember Ryan had her hand.
Councilmember Ryan?
Right. I'd like to, I think we do need to take action tonight if we're planning to.
We do? Yep.
To approve the whole thing. So with amendments in it. So, Attorney Hall, I was hoping to make a motion to approve all 4 of the transportation element suggestions from staff. Can we do a slate or do we need to take them individually?
You can do them all at one time, and
Okay,
then
great.
if somebody
Second.
objects and has to split them up, we can deal with that.
So,
Okay, thank you. So there's been a motion, a second. For clarification, the staff suggested language on the comprehensive plan transportation element
correct.
as presented today.
Yes, for TR8, TR15, TR51, and TR37. Thank you for the suggestions.
Okay, motion and second. No further comment.
Oops, sorry.
No, Councilmember Bader.
Just asking is, I mean, in the world that people who build and develop thought about costs that any of these things will impose or increase that weren't present before?
No, I don't think so. We already, that piece of code that I showed require transportation demand management policies. I think this, or reports. I think this policy is consistent with that, would not drive a significant new requirement for work.
And I'm particularly concerned about TR 37. Good goal, but I'm worried what this locks us into, especially in a world where I think, and I don't know if the city attorney would have this information, but my recollection is that of recent pedestrian fatalities, the vast majority, the driver was not cited, indicating that there was a pedestrian issue, and short of, and I think in 1 or 2 where the driver was cited, it was a driving under the influence. So I struggle with the high bar this sets, and for practically implementing a elimination of traffic fatalities, especially involving pedestrians, short of fencing off sidewalks, jailing drunk drivers for an extended period, et cetera. So what kind of bar are we setting here on TR 37 if we approve it?
Yeah, we've got Tom Hood, city engineer, can shed some light on this, doing a lot of work on pedestrian safety.
Good evening, council. Yeah, this policy is really reflective of our Safe Streets for All program and the safety action plan that we've been undertaking with we stated as a goal of eliminating. Yes, that is a lofty goal, but it's one that, the federal guidelines for SS4A have given us. It's one that council in previous actions has resolved to support. And so we are aligning our transportation element with the safety action plan that we have underway. And so, to answer your question, will we ever get there? Nobody really knows, but certainly the city and Public Works is committed toward that goal.
What would this mean if 10 years from now we've lowered all our speed limits, taken other mitigation measures, and we still really haven't seen a significant reduction in fatalities and serious injuries? Any thoughts? What are the practical implications of this?
Well, first of all, I can't imagine a situation where it wouldn't, but this is not an effort that we will quit on or give up on. We'll adjust our tactics. We'll continue to keep up with current practices and current research and implement those into our roadway designs, into our safety programs as best we can, and as funding is available to do so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so before us, we have a motion to amend the comprehensive plan as proposed with what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.
Just the four transportation.
Oh, yeah, that's
element.
right. 4
So we'll
transportation.
still have one.
Yeah, that's what I just want to make
policy.
sure. Yeah, 4 transportation actions. So any other questions? Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
With skepticism, yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, so just so we can check off our action items here on here. So could you, we have TR 37, TR 51, TR 8, and TR 15, correct? Okay, good. We're all on the same page. Okay. Oh, so before us, so that included, I have TR 8. I have, as far as some of the potential.
There's just one more that was proposed that maybe Councilmember Ryan wants to make an amendment on. It's that action DD2 item.
It's action what?
Last page.
On the screen.
Action DD2, work with the Historic Commission.
Okay, thank you, DD2. Okay. So, all right, Councilmember Ryan.
Yeah,
Hmm?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff suggestion for action DD2 to work with the Historic Commission and Planning Commission to develop recommendations for city council consideration for design requirements for new construction of large buildings abutting historic overlays.
Second.
Okay, motion and second's been made. Any questions, comments, or Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you. So I brought this forward as it's part of a larger package of responses to the Norton Grand neighborhood with the petition they had sent around last week. So a concern, it's also supposed to be a nod to our historic commission because they had some concerns about, what types of buildings would be put around the historic overlays. So I'm hopeful that this will help with some actionable steps so that they can be more involved with the design process.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Bader.
And same theme here. Thought about costs this might impose on people who are developing property that aren't imposed currently.
The outcome, so this would be just a research and as preparing a set of recommendations along with the two advisory bodies. The outcome of that could create costs, but the study itself would not. So the council would have a chance at that point to weigh in. Presumably a design requirement adds something.
Okay. Councilmember Zarlingo.
I know in some areas we are not allowed to impose design requirements, and I'm wondering, are we going to run crossways with any other limits on that kind of stuff in this?
The state legislature passed a bill in 2023 requiring only clear and objective design standards. So I believe that we could work within those constraints. It is things like consistent with, or if you don't know when you're designing your building, if it's going to work or not, then that is impermissible. But if it is clear, maybe a menu of options, or you must have 6 inches of this and 12 inches of that, then it could work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second before you. And that is for action item DD2, right? Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
Council President Schwab, there weren't any other comprehensive plan policies or action proposals that were presented by council members in advance. This would be a chance if there were other amendments to, this is sort of the language part of the comp plan. If there were any other amendments that council members wanted to bring forward, you could. Otherwise, the next phase would be to adopt the whole comprehensive plan and then move to the development regulations part. And that's where your conversation about neighborhood commercial, specific zones, and the other things you presented so far would be up for grabs.
Okay, but I still have a couple of questions about some of the documentation about TR8 or the transportation demand management idea. That's just hasn't been adopted yet. That's just sitting out there for now. And
We-
for those even, I just want to be clarified, we did adopt those?
We did. So TR8's
Right.
a little confusing because there's 3 slides on it. There's kind of an intro and
Right.
then a code example and then
Then it goes
another.
back to the same slide.
Okay,
Yeah.
just for the record, I just wanted to make sure that's
Yeah.
clear. Okay.
So the amendments that you passed were, well, were I guess everything that was, on the presentation that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those watching, thank you, for the planning department and your work. Council has been working on several different options for tonight's meeting, and the planning department had put together some documentation just in case it was wanted to be brought up in this meeting. So, okay, so moving on. Before us, we have a motion and a second to adopt the 2024 comprehensive plan, and we have made some amendments at this point. So the floor is still open.
I have another amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
To move, changing, amending 19.38.030 non-conforming structures.
That will be under the next item, development regulations.
So I should wait until we
Yeah, so
move.
this one, we're wrapping up the comprehensive plan, which
So
is one.
do
we're
you
doing.
not, okay, and then the commercial stuff, that'll also be in the next one? All right, good.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else before us? Okay, Councilmember Bader.
What about the issue that was raised about the inclusionary zoning? Does that fall in this section or in the next?
That's in the development regulations, chapter 1909. There
Thank you.
is a policy in the comprehensive plan that reads something to the effect of adopt inclusionary zoning in areas of high displacement risk. So if the council wanted to completely do away with it, you may want to take a look at that policy. If it is more modest changes, then that policy would continue to be appropriate. I can get the exact language if you'd like.
Is that in the next section? Is that on
It-
item 11 or is?
It's in
Both
both.
sections.
There is a policy in the housing
Housing
element.
It's HO 20, it's page 58, or 64 of the PDF. It's implement inclusionary zoning requirements in areas of the city. He read it from memory. Let's just take a moment and acknowledge that. Implement inclusionary zoning requirements in areas of the city subject to high displacement risk. So if we're gonna totally not implement any inclusionary zoning whatsoever, maybe we talk about that. If you're thinking you might make amendments or even leave it in as is, then totally fine to leave that policy in.
I was thinking about the idea of that 3-year review, maybe 5-year sunset idea. So now or wait.
That would sound consistent with this policy. So anything that we do in the development regulations that is consistent with that policy can be fair game for the next ordinance.
Thank you very much.
In 11, item 11.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, anything else before any other suggested amendments or proposed amendments?
We have one,
Uh-oh. Is
and
that,
I apologize. We wrote one for what is HO blank 1917, I don't know what it is, that
Is-
says preserve affordable housing, and we did have actual language for it, and somehow it didn't make it into the final draft, and I'm going to search for it, and I assure you I will get it in a second.
okay, so admin has a suggested amendment that council makes.
Yeah.
Okay. How about some of the other amendments that council has been working on that we have some preparation? They're all for 11. Okay, just wanted to make sure we clarify. Okay, so we have anything more in 10 that needs to be addressed? Just
Not-
yours, just one more?
Just yeah.
Okay, and the potential if we don't want to have an inclusionary zone at all.
Right, if you were gonna not
Okay.
follow that path at all, you might change that policy.
Okay,
But if
and-
you're working around the edges of it, has been
All
been
right, I'm
suggested.
just trying to be clear, and you have a suggestion that goes under item 10.
Yes, so
Okay.
it's actually that same page. If you happen to flip to it, like Allison noted, there's an HO 18, and then the one after that says HO _, and it's just in brackets, and it is an important goal, preserve affordable housing, but that's all it says as a placeholder.
We had some comments that our policies were solid on creating affordable housing, but could have been stronger on the preservation of existing affordable housing. So I think we noted a placeholder for that. worked on language, and that's what appears to be missing
Sorry, I
from
was
this
out of
draft.
town.
Okay, at this point, do you need more time to research it?
As soon as the computer pops up, I think.
Or
Okay.
it's.
All right, Councilman Bader.
Related, I don't know if York could answer this while Alice Ann is working, but I think Councilmember Zarlingo mentioned to me before the meeting that there was some aspect of inclusionary zoning that we hadn't considered, that Sound Transit has imposed some. I don't know if I could ask if this would be an appropriate time at least to get that information about how that might impact anything we might do with inclusion.
Yes, thank you.
Could you clarify that? So we're talking about other
This is inclusionary zoning.
upcoming regulations that the state is
Correct.
proposing. Okay.
Yes, House Bill 1491 in this year's 2025 state legislative session, known as the TOD bill, Transit Oriented Development Bill, includes a requirement that was cited in Bobby Thompson's comments today, that within a transit station area, which I believe is a half mile to light rail stations and bus rapid transit, there is a requirement to include inclusionary zoning. And I believe it was 10% to, they used words instead of numbers, 10% to workforce housing and 10% to affordable housing. If I'm not mistaken, those are the same 80% and 60% area median income that we're using in our program. So in other words, by 2029, within a half mile of the station area and the bus rapid transit, we will be required to have an inclusionary zoning program similar to the one that is incorporated into this periodic update by 2029. The station area is a smaller area than the area that we have identified for inclusionary zoning. So that is one difference there. But otherwise, we
Can I ask
would.
a question?
Yeah.
By how much? Like,
It's a mile. Kind
Yeah,
of down Casino Road to between the
maybe a,
potential stations, so.
yeah. Maybe
So
it would be
not
a
by
quarter.
much.
I would say we're at like a quarter of the area that we have, maybe half would be included in this.
okay.
Probably would include a lot of the right on Casino Road, but the inclusionary zoning also includes a little bit more kind of down Holly and into
Mhm.
the rest of that area, so.
Councilman Ryan.
And the map that we have now is based off of Puget Sound Regional Council's map, which identified high risk of displacement based on economic factors and light rail and other things, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, was there any more questions about, so really we're talking, having a side discussion on the difference between the new state law and the application of it and our current proposal in the comprehensive plan. Councilman Zarlingo.
Well, in looking through this, a thing or two that I guess I'd like to see clarified, but I'm trying to understand. I think the choice we should make right now is if there's a, as you said, Ms. Gregerson, a choice to not include inclusionary zoning, that ought to be made now as part of this comprehensive plan vote. So I was trying to walk through my thinking on this so far, and I'll acknowledge some of this is not yet known, though a bit was recently clarified. And I'm thinking about the fact that how we include the inclusionary zoning, how it fits the particular needs of that area. It sounds as if we will be compelled to do this if we don't do it by the end of the year, a version that we will have less control of. And if I understand it correctly, if we move forward with this, the benefit to it is that we have some ongoing flexibility, because these things are full of unintended consequences. And that I'm particularly mindful of the fact that our planning commission, with only one member disagreeing, chose to remove that inclusionary zoning requirement. They had been considering those advocating for inclusionary zoning and those also talking about the costs and the fact there might be one of the major unintended consequences being that it would raise the prices enough to where it would make a number of those projects simply not pencil. And I think it gets back to the goal we have of preserving affordable housing. in my mind, it's not preserving affordable housing, it's preserving housing affordability. And if there is housing that is affordable, but its presence is keeping better affordable housing from occurring, that's a bad deal. So I'm trying to think and focus on, again, preserving housing affordability. And if that means in some cases, that's why I'm concerned about if we do inclusionary zoning that we don't have control over, and we cannot adapt that inclusionary zoning standards to where it works best for us in the environment we're in, because that will be different than the environments in the county. That will be different in the areas that have already have already implemented inclusionary zoning. And I'm not sure how much data we have in terms of that we can really point to that's relevant to us in terms of inclusionary zoning. So mixing together those analysis, especially that's been done by the Planning Commission, and considering the possibility that we might unintentionally, if we have inclusionary zoning that's inappropriate for us, imposed on us, or is non-optimal for us, imposed on us, that we will get less affordable housing. We may preserve some of that affordable housing, but we get less housing affordability overall. So from that standpoint, and the comment that a growing the anti-displacement and a growing and vibrant city don't have to be, in Mr. Thompson's comment, in conflict, but I'd say there's certainly tension, and we need to do those things right, because we cannot get past the idea that we will have trade-offs there. So if what we do accidentally reduces the amount of housing that we produce, we are still caught by that supply-demand problem. And that's always going to that's always going to hurt affordability. So given that, then, to speak to the question that's actually before us in item 10, I recognize very clearly the Planning Commission's opinion on that, but that the effect of getting rid of that will mean something is imposed on us that we don't have control over. So from that standpoint, I am leaning toward allowing the inclusionary zoning as it was planned to go forward, with the anticipation that we will adjust that in a way that we preserve affordability, not the houses themselves.
Well, that was the question I have too, is if the state comes out with a mandate, is it at the minimum, or if we have something in place already, would we be able to make adjustments freely? And I don't know what the language of the bill, the intent of the administrative code was.
That bill says that if a city has enacted, which you would do if you pass this, or expands an affordable housing incentive program, then you don't have to have these requirements set by the state. So you're exempt from it.
We would have, we'd be exempt and be able to do our own
Yeah.
and make our own
If the city
changes.
has taken an action in advance of those state requirements coming into play, then you can go with what you've got, and you can adjust it, of course, instead of kind of having the floor of what the state set for all station areas.
Thank you. That was like the bottom line question.
And that would then give us the ability to look at other entities that have implemented inclusionary zoning, see how it really works, see what the costs end up being, and how those costs affect whether that housing is produced or not.
Okay, how are we doing on our updated language?
Yeah.
We're gonna be very patient, because you guys have been extremely patient with us over the last 6 months, including our last minute potential amendments. So thank you. So,
I think we've got suggested wording here.
okay, so administration is proposing an amendment to the comprehensive plan, item 10.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be a new policy to the housing element, replacing the policy that is in brackets that says preserve affordable housing. And the policy would read, collaborate with local partners to preserve and maintain affordable housing units. Collaborate with local partners to preserve and maintain affordable housing units.
Councilmember Ryan moves approval.
Okay, motion and a second. Motion and seconds are made. No further comment. Clerk, please take a roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, so on to our action item number 10 as amended. Any further amendments? Okay. At this time, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay. We'll have to replay the tape for that one, to make sure, right? Okay. All right, on to item number 11, Council Bill 2505-37, third and final reading, and an ordinance adopting the Everett 2044 periodic update development regulations and amending chapter 3, 8, 13, 14, 16, 19, and 20.
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further discussion, or we have some potential amendment presentations?
Yeah, so we, just in any order, but we started with neighborhood commercial. So what we have here, as promised at last week's meeting, we turned Alice Ann's memo and the potential changes that were listed in a table in that memo into code language. That was Exhibit 4 to the revised memo that was provided and posted. That is included in this package here and up on the screen. I have 3 slides: where, what, and how. We can talk about, there are suggested amendments, I think, to each one of them. So maybe we can start with where, or if you'd like a different order, we can.
Okay, okay, thank you. So we have 3 maybe potential amendments, is what you're saying?
I think there was one potential amendment from Councilmember Ryan to the where. So this is unchanged from what we discussed, although briefly last week. This would include areas that are highlighted in a salmon color would be allow neighborhood commercial on corner lots anywhere in that salmon color. Also on corner lots on corners, including one of the streets that is a line that is a darker color. The very darkest color that is West Mukilteo Boulevard, West Casino Road, and South 2nd Avenue. Neighborhood commercial would be allowed on any lot abutting those streets.
An amendment, like no matter what, an amendment is needed for this, right? Because, or is this what's in?
This
the-
is in the proposal. Yes.
So adopting the whole plan gets you this, or you can amend this in some way.
Okay, so as far as potential amendments, we kind of have the where and then allowed uses. My suggestion, we just address them separately. So is there any more discussion about where? Okay, Councilman Ryan.
Great, thank you. It's here. So I would like to make a motion to amend 1905.045B1 in the development regulations. So the first number on the list here, to say corner lots, meaning lots that abut 2 different and intersecting public streets in a residential zone. So if there's a second, I'd be happy to speak to it. Sure. And corner lots, meaning lots that abut 2 different and intersecting public streets in a residential zone. So it takes out that last section about within the areas identified at the map and swaps it with in a residential zone.
The effect of which would allow neighborhood commercial on corners throughout the city in residential zones.
Do we have a second? I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, with Councilman Fosse second. Okay, discussion. So could you please repeat the effect of the change?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this would have the effect of eliminating the map, and instead neighborhood commercial would be allowed on corners throughout the city in residential zones, subject to the what and the how. This was how it was originally structured.
Okay, any discussion? Oh,
Speak to it.
okay.
Great, thanks. So I would love to see a uniform policy across the entire city relating to neighborhood commercial. Having individual council members literally redline a map to allow for neighborhood corner stores, I think is bad policy and creates economic gerrymandering. It's overstepping our bounds as council members to perform the function of our expert staff of urban planning. Lacks transparency on how the decisions were made, and also contributes to food deserts or convenience deserts by limiting where these services can exist. We should be developing a universal and consistent policy for the location of corner stores, not a patchwork approach. It's unclear how, I'm still unclear how our at-large council members have been able to weigh in on a map like this. And public input has also overwhelmingly shared that they would like to see more corner stores, not less. A citywide policy provides clear zoning regulations that apply to everyone and is a simpler policy to implement and enforce than a complex map with unique expectations. I would ask my colleagues to support a one citywide approach that allows for economic growth and empowers every neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Zarnago.
Thank you. I know everybody knows I've been working on this, and I guess from the first, I'll say that I think we've been pretty transparent. And if we had one city, one topography, one density, one area of plentiful food options and other services and versus deserts, that would be a more practical approach. But I do recognize the widespread desire for more walkability, livability, along with the density that we're doing. But there's some important context here. We're dealing with increasing density, lots of changes recently, and especially lots of changes coming over the next several years, state mandates, many being implemented through this new comp plan. And this change in character, it recognizes improvements we'd like to see, more functional neighborhoods and neighborhoods that support the density we need. That'll be different needs in different neighborhoods. But I think it's important to understand that, and we have heard public comment against this neighborhood commercial proposal. What's happening, I think, is a recognition that we're pulling more commercial uses into residential neighborhoods. Not necessarily a bad thing, but a complicated thing. And that's going to have impacts on the residents who will already be seeing many other density impacts focused, including on things like reduced focus on parking spaces and vehicles. And the infrastructure in these neighborhoods can't be changed overnight. The density increases we're talking about generally, and the addition of commercial can multiply each other, and understanding the results and the impacts are increasingly uncertain because we're piling one large set of changes on top of another. Again, different parts of the city, some with more ample shopping, some have more ample shopping already. Others are in serious need of it. Some areas have large areas of street grids and supported suitable areas, some don't. And those differences give rise to an approach where we, at least at first, and my suggestion, designate some areas in some parts of the city rather than allowing these commercial use on every residential neighborhood corner. Essentially, then different needs and different impacts. And I have been struck particularly by what people write to us and comment both in public and individually. There's quite a bit of consistency, particularly in terms of things like neighborhood stores, bodegas, and coffee shops. There are general assertions for those positive about this, about the impacts being minimal, but those who describe their desired and expected store types haven't talked about those impacts. And I am mindful that the impacts will be felt by a limited set of immediate neighbors who will already be dealing with the density increases mandated in other ways, especially those that include reduced parking per resident, multiple ADUs, multiplexes on formerly single-family properties, removal of some design standards. We talked about that earlier this evening. So this insertion of commercial uses in residential zones is therefore a source of complex interactions and really a limited ability to predict them. So for me, and as discussed in our subcommittee, the approach I've suggested and that we see here is to focus first on the most desired and expected uses, to allow those of the areas that need them the most and are suitable for them in terms of their street grids. That's the salmon colors you see there. We've enumerated a variety of those and others where I think we'll get the biggest improvement in quality of life, supporting the increased density we'll be getting one way or another, and avoid the impacts that are larger or more difficult to predict. Now, the last thing I wanted to say on this area is that this is not set in stone for all time. I think council members who have had any interest in this have looked deeply at their district. That's part of what they're responsible for. We also have inputs from at-large council members. So I think there's been considerable consideration of this. It's going to be implemented in the most needed parts of the city this way, and I think pretty intelligently. This combination of our increasing neighborhood density and experience with these most desired businesses, the ones we put in the first, will guide additional adjustments to this new commercial zone. I would expect those adjustments to include additional business types. And I'm talking here both about types and locations because they interact and because I don't want to bore everybody to tears. And I expect, in addition to additional types, different limitations on the size or operating hours of numbers of participants. Because what we found, at least in the subcommittee discussions, in my opinion, was that there were a lot of complexities in this. There were things you might want to allow, but maybe hours be different for one type of business versus another, where there are impacts that are different because of those hours. I'd also expect some expansion of the areas where businesses are permitted. Again, we're part of the consent of the governed here. We want our residents to feel like they're being heard and that things are being thought through thoroughly. And I think using the initial experience of neighborhood businesses and the successes that I think we'll see, especially in some of these most desired business types, will give us the insights to expand not only those types, but the locations where we'd allow them. And that gives us a bead on which are the most beneficial things in relationship to the impact they have. And I think that's basically it. I expect we'll see some impacts that we didn't expect. I think we'll see some benefits we probably didn't expect. And we and future councilors will be accountable to our residents and will take appropriate action. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an amendment that's been seconded. Any other comments or? Councilmember Bader.
I'll just say for my part, Councilmember Ryan asked about the input at large. Councilmember said the input I gave was basically back to my suggestion. We limit them to arterials or those that look like arterials, like Walnut, or that we set up a much easier regime for neighbors to get permit parking requirements in their block. I think impacts of a lot of the of neighborhood businesses, noise, other things I think are all dealt with in our code except for parking. And so that continues to be my concern. And I think it was even spoken to last week when someone suggested, I think it was we strike clinics or something from that, mentioning that most people, who use, at least they envisioned people using clinics or people who didn't just walk to them, but tended to drive to them. So I think that concern continues to inform me, but obviously, happy to take this as a compromise. I know no piece of legislation ends up perfect. And so that's where I am. Thank you.
Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, as we look at this, our complete comp plan and the unprecedented growth that we anticipate with this, I don't mind taking steps on one or two items. And it seems that this would be one of those where we could come back and evaluate it in 3 years, revisit it for expansion at that point, but work out any bugs. I think there's just so much potential growth and so many different options for people in our community that I don't mind taking this step with the neighborhood commercial as the plan is now, and then looking to expand it in 3 years. We can have that added to it somehow.
Any other comments? Councilmember Fossey.
Okay, so I've been a small business owner, and I think that my experience we have been overly prohibitive and trying to think of all the bad things that are going to happen, and that creates additional barriers for a lot of small businesses just trying to start out. We think of the worst case scenario and then we legislate making sure that that won't happen. And at the same time, it prevents small businesses from being able to succeed and thrive. And that was really challenging for me every time that I encountered those. Overly bureaucratic and over-regulated approaches to things. I wholeheartedly support the review and looking back about how things are going and the review of the success of it or any issues or problems or complaints. But I think the overly prescriptive approach, when you're going to look at MRSC, they're saying now is the time to add supportive policies related to corner stores in your comp plan and amend your zoning code to remove barriers. They're telling us to do this. This is what they are bringing forward as suggestions to do. I don't think, I mean, we already have a ton of restrictions in addition to the wheres of the what and all these other things. I think that we are overly concerned of the worst case scenario, but a lot of these are not going to be that. I know that my neighbors they were frustrated a long time ago when a building got built that took out our only coffee shop that we had. And that was a story that like stuck with us for years. And I bring it up all the time because we're in a desert. We can't walk around. So we end up having to drive everywhere. And it's frustrating. Looking at these things that are trying to prevent neighborhood commercial when it comes to allowed uses, and you talks about daycare centers and all these other things that we really do need. And a lot of these are not very offensive things that are going to create a ton of issues. If we start experiencing those issues, that is when I would say that your review and your policy review on everything would be the time for me that I would want to start putting in additional restrictions and telling small businesses that they need to figure out something else because that's not going to work for us. But preemptively putting additional barriers in the way is not the approach that I want to go. So I do support the universal concept that you're bringing forward. I understand that if it doesn't go through council, we can make adjustments elsewhere, but that's just former small business owner, how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you. So for my comments, I'm going to speak against the amendment. Our residents are feeling a lot of pressure, and yes, I heard they are concerned about worst case scenario, but in reality, that's what they're really worried about. So just from getting input from residents, we are increasing the density of the city. There is a lot of pressure on growth. I do understand that, but I think what we have before us takes those few steps. Also, we're talking about an area, of course, in reflection, it is mostly my district, but you also got to examine the characteristics of the district and the density. Also, there are already commercial spaces and most of the uses of them are daytime industrial workers. And so there is plenty of space to service that type of client. Also, the concerns about traffic and parking are very loud, and I hear them strongly. I think the idea of planning and doing reporting, and I'm very curious to see if there is a significant demand for these, especially in the areas that basically are just based on some thoroughfares and some transportation corridors. So as part of the report here in 18 months, I'm very interested in hearing what the demand would be. I'd like that to be part of the report is interested parties and even anywhere else in the city that perhaps they are prohibited currently and maybe we need to make some adjustments based on the demand. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. We have an amendment on the table and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
No.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
No.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
No.
President Schwab.
No. Okay, thanks for the debate. On to then our next potential amendment.
Next is what? These are the uses or subcategories of uses that would be allowed in the where that we just talked about. There had been a couple of changes, I think, that we talked about last week that limited hotels and motels to 5 rooms, limited daycare to 20 children or adults. I think those were the couple that are relatively new.
So would this be a form of amendment, or is this currently in the?
This is what you see on the screen is what is in the ordinance right now.
Okay, so so at this point, if council wants to make the discussion or make an amendment based on the allowance uses for the commercial area, Councilmember Fosse.
I have a question. Can I ask those instead?
Yeah, thank you.
The lodging, hotels, motels, does that include bed and breakfasts?
bed and breakfast in historic structures is permitted under a section that allows use of historic structures to
Elsewhere.
keep them economically viable. Yes.
And any of this right now would not apply to any current businesses?
No.
Okay.
There's
Councilor
a
Zephyr.
nuance to that answer on the next slide, but to whether a use at all, it would be a, there, you can continue a legal non-conforming use, even if the zoning code changes to prohibit it. In most cases, I think this neighborhood commercial is creating new allowances for it, so yes.
So question on that. So if someone wanted to build a large bed and breakfast, a new structure, it wouldn't be permitted.
Correct.
Okay,
Limited to 5 rooms.
5 rooms. Yeah, okay.
That's not.
Allison, do you know where there is a separate route for adaptive reuse of historic buildings that could provide an avenue for establishment of a bed and breakfast? I could try to look that up, but under,
I mentioned new building.
yeah, so new building would be I would consider a bed and breakfast under hotel motel, so it would be limited to 5 rooms.
How about adding to an existing older structure to increase room sizes? Rooms.
Under this framework, I think you would still be limited to 5 rooms total.
Okay, so if I have an older warehouse mansion with 8 rooms and I couldn't add any more to it.
Correct, you would be limited to 5 rooms total.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Zango.
I think this does illustrate the kinds of things that our subcommittee attempted to grapple with, and where some of these numbers came from. Because if there is a current large older building that is 10 or 12 rooms in a B&B or similar, it would continue to operate, especially as that helps us keep those old buildings. The intent in part was to work on these complexities and to make sure that we don't accidentally create small hotels, and that is not very small hotels, say 10 rooms or more, in something that is that's not really expecting that kind of thing. The same sort of thing with the daycare center. It's new uses. It's up to 20 students or adults. So that's the general thrust of what we were trying to do, was expand this in a way that we thought was reasonable for these neighborhoods, and then anticipate changing this or expanding this in the future as we get more. I think that was, yeah, that was, yeah. Well, I think Airbnbs would be seen as a B&B, and the use is divided.
So for the record, over there, B&B would be included in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
That Allison can tell you with authority, but that was what we discussed.
Yeah, a bed and breakfast would be considered a hotel motel. There is the other section of code that Allison mentioned. This is existing code, not proposed for change, adaptive reuse of non-residential buildings. If it is unlikely that a building could be preserved if only uses permitted in the underlying zone were allowed, and a different use would enhance the character of the building in the vicinity and it would not have a detrimental effect, then the following uses may be considered for adaptive reuse: assisted living, library, museum, social services, artist studio, music venues, bed and breakfasts.
And that's administrative permit
That would
or,
be,
or just a permitted?
I believe so, yeah.
What we talked a little bit about administrative permits in the discussion, and I think the idea was to strike something that would allow the vast majority of things people would want and would allow some flexibility
Okay,
if needed.
thank you. Let's get Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, on slide 5, the standards. Oh, we're not there yet. No, okay, never mind.
Okay, good. All right, we'll get there. Mayor, thank you.
I just have a question, since Councilmember Bader brought up clinic, there's no language around clinic. Is there size limitations or anything? It's just any clinic.
3,000 square feet.
Thank you.
for
That's helpful
everything.
for, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
For neighbors that are watching, they're
Yeah.
not envisioning a huge hospital. This is a
Yeah,
small
3,000
clinic.
square
Thank
feet.
you.
It's designed for doctors or dentists or physical therapists or whatever that might want to operate locally. And it is not social services.
Thank you.
I just flipped to the next page so you can see.
Okay,
some of the-
do we have more questions on this one? Councilmember Ryan.
Thanks. I still have questions about the allowed uses. So I know we worked earlier on daycares and early learning centers, and there were certain parameters that we worked to implement about the wheres and the how many is. So I was trying to recall how a limit of 20 children or adults for a daycare center, so I guess more children than adults, would intersect or be compliant or comparable, I guess is the right word, for the other policies that we have in place for daycare centers.
We are allowing daycare centers in all other zones outside of neighborhood commercial. In the neighborhood commercial sites was the only one where we limited the size. And I think currently it is 8 children, but I could be wrong, and we took it up to 20.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good question. Any other questions on, we're talking neighborhood commercial allowable uses in how it's structured in the current comprehensive plan proposal? Okay, thank you. Now we're on to potential evaluation of the standards. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, I had just one suggestion on the hours of operation to change that to 7 AM to 10 PM would be my recommendation.
If that is a motion, I will second it.
Okay, motion and seconds are
The
made.
motion.
Okay,
That was a motion.
okay, in a second. So, any comment? I'll just make a quick comment here. I'm a little concerned about shift workers and the ability for the operating limits for daycare centers. So if that was something that would be, we could make an adjustment for, that'd be good. Councilmember Fosse.
And the Airbnbs, hotels, I mean, does the time frame here impact any other businesses or businesses that are having non-conforming use by putting in that structured time frame that may negatively impact current businesses?
Yeah, so the question is, if there's an existing business, which there are at least a couple that are open until, there's some groceries and corner stores that are open until 11 PM that are,
Before you get to that, I think it's just, if we say hours, if you have to open your business at 6 AM or 7 AM, what happens to a hotel?
right? No, I don't know.
And a daycare.
Well, I didn't think you'd say, I don't know, but.
I would read that as a problem. How can you operate a hotel without operating it overnight? So I would suggest adding except hotels potentially.
Are there like noise ordinances or other things that would probably be relevant, maybe?
Yeah, I think the key would be, is there going to be a business that's open that has people coming and going till 10, 11 o'clock at night? Is it a coffee shop that has music and all that kind of stuff till that hour? That would be my concern. Certainly, I wouldn't want to prohibit other businesses that need to have availability at 6 AM or whatever, but so I don't know how you put that in there.
The noise ordinance should very much help with that type of problem, like so music, things like that, that wouldn't be allowed after 10, just like it's not allowed currently. People coming and going, that still creates noise clearly, but that type of noise wouldn't be allowed.
Additionally, by going at 7, we limit coffee shops and breakfast types of places for people that are trying to get to work or get on the road early or something to that effect. So sticking with the 6 provides those businesses the opportunity to make money, as Councilor Fosse had suggested, the limiting of some of the regulatory.
Councilmember Bader.
So thinking this through, even if we weren't to approve Councilmember Tui's amendment, does the current proposal 6 AM to 11 AM still pose a problem for hotel, motel, bed and breakfast, maybe even daycare? So even as written, is it posing a problem?
Yeah, I phoned a friend and we have discretion in how we administer code. And I think there could be a reasonable interpretation of hours of operation that would be like when the front desk is open or when there's some activity that exceeds people sleeping. I note also animal daycare, there will be animals there overnight. So many businesses are in some form of operation, but I think we could interpret it reasonably. If there was a question that a prospective business was worried about it, we could issue a planning director interpretation or a rule to confirm that. So I take back that there's necessarily a conflict. It could introduce some uncertainty, but I think it could be workable.
Does that still solve the problem with daycares though? Because I think some of them open 5, 6.
I would say when there are children or adults at the daycare, that would definitely be operations. So that would be we would ask that a daycare in a neighborhood commercial not open until the open hours.
Is this one of those things where if we don't approve a time and we remove the time now, that we can leave that up to the discretion of planning to decide if that is an allowable use or a problem? Because we have the noise ordinance. Is there another way to put it at your discretion for if it's going to be overly burdensome on the community? So we can disallow for confusion.
Yeah, I think I wonder about leaving it completely open. But no. Because the noise ordinance is kind of like, but just at the edges of, I think there are things that would not violate the noise ordinance that might still, everyone on council might be uncomfortable with.
What if we added, so hours of operation limited to whatever, whether it's 6 or 7 to 10 or 11, and then with some exceptions as allowed by the planning director or something, so that it gives us a little bit of flexibility, but it also gives our neighborhood and community some predictability of what they might expect.
Yeah.
So that when we have those kind of one-off that are some interesting nuance that we want to childcare center to open at 5 a.m. because they cater to shift work at Boeing, that we would have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think having that line included, when people look this up on our planning, they see that there's a reason why maybe they are allowed to be open.
Yeah.
And as opposed to thinking that's just, that's it. Yeah. Okay, I can deal with that.
So procedurally, go ahead, Councilmember.
Sorry, yeah, good procedurally, exactly. So if Councilmember Tui is amending her amendment or changing her, then I along the lines of what she just said, I would certainly continue to support that as the second, yeah.
To include what the mayor, just how she,
Planning team can word it better.
Yes.
whoever can word it best.
I recorded it as with some exceptions as allowed by the planning director.
Okay, I'll change my amendment to that. Thank you.
Is the, so what were the hour times?
7, 10.
Would you do a friendly amendment and have the morning still be 6 o'clock, but have the 10
Sure.
o'clock be the?
Sure.
Okay.
I will.
Like that friendly amendment,
Second,
6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
With the ability of the,
Yeah.
So I'd like to have some specific language here. Let's add it to the end of D, which says oh, I didn't have it up on top there. We need some standards for that. So where it says D, standards for neighborhood commercial uses, comma, provided that standards may be modified by the planning director if determined through the review process described in Title 15 to be compatible with surrounding properties and the immediate vicinity. So I borrowed language from number 9 right above it, which is at the bottom of your screen here. So we would take that if determined through the review process to be described in Title 15 to be compatible with surrounding properties in the immediate vicinity, and add that to standards for neighborhood commercial uses. And I said, provided that standards may be modified.
okay,
by the planning director.
thank you very much. Okay, so we have.
May I ask a clarifying
Yeah,
question?
Council,
Can you briefly describe Title 15 review process?
Yeah, that's the procedures for administering the development regulations of Title 19. The review process described would probably default to a review process 1, which is a planning director administrative decision and is a very simple, that could be a same day thing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
A brief question, if there is a business that's operating, say currently in this kind of business and operating to 11 PM, would they be able to continue that as a, okay.
Okay.
Though I'd like to restrict to have this corner counted as a 10 PM limit, so
Is that a motion?
to take effect immediately.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we have some friendly amended motion. And friendly seconded amendment for the record. With no further discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes, okay. Moving on to the next potential amendment.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, Councilmember Fosse.
Okay, the neighborhood commercial standards, reduced setback for neighborhood commercial uses. Can you clarify that?
It was designed to pull the use forward towards the sidewalk, so it would not, if there is a new building, that it would not create as much of an impact on adjacent structures, and so that it would.
It's if it's a new building,
Yes.
it's not any
No.
existing
No.
buildings. Okay,
Existing buildings would stay the way they are.
thank you.
And that setback is 2 feet.
Good question.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on to the next potential amendment.
Are we all done with neighborhood commercial?
Think so?
Yep.
Can I ask one question again?
Councilmember Fosse.
What is the relation of home occupancy associated with this?
None.
Separate paths.
Okay.
You could have a home occupation in a corner lot. Under the provisions of that section, you could have neighborhood commercial.
Thank
So
you.
you would have your choice of which route.
You
Thank
can
you.
have residential above if it was, a mixed use building.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Fosse? All right, Councilmember Zarlingo? Okay, never mind, we're good. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. You guys are doing great work and I really appreciate you guys, every one of you. All right, so let's go on to our next potential.
Okay. I think we're into zoning map now. And so we've got, Councilmember Ryan mentioned this at the last meeting, and an amendment for parcels abutting the Norton Grand Historic Overlay and east of it between 32nd and 35th. Amending that from what is in the ordinance now as MU7 to UR7. And then along with that, amending how heights are measured, which is in that is not the right citation. It's in 1922-060, I believe, but the words are correct. Currently, in the proposal, heights will be consolidated and measured from the base elevation, which is the average bottom of the building. There, with one exception, which is historic overlay zones, where heights will continue to be measured from the sidewalk at the front lot line. The proposal from Councilmember Ryan, other than the rezone to UR7, would be to add parcels within 50 feet of a historic overlay to be measured from the sidewalk. The effect of that in these parcels here is that slopes upward from the sidewalk. There's about a 20-foot elevation difference from the alley to the front lot line. The base elevation of the building would presumably be about halfway through that. So by measuring from the sidewalk instead of the base elevation, that would be about 10 feet lower that the top of the building could be. The UR7 zone is 5-foot lower height limit than the MU7 zone. The MU zones get an extra 5 feet to allow for a taller first ground floor for commercial uses. So the combined impact of these two would be to reduce the tops of the buildings by 15 feet in the blue square. The impact outside of that to areas next to historic overlay would depend on what the slope is, but would be minor.
Okay, thanks for the update on this potential amendment. Is there a motion?
Councilmember Ryan moves approval of everything that's on the screen right now.
Second.
Okay. Motion's made and second. Any discussion? Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan mentioned this one last week as well. Parcels on the east side of Terrace Drive from 42nd to 44th, currently zoned MU 15, to revise that to UR 4.
Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader, yes, proposed rezoning parcels north of 19th Street and east of Rockefeller, with the exception of those that are currently zoned neighborhood business. So you see about 10 parcels that are north of 19th that are cut out of the blue outline there. So all of those that are in the blue outline rezoned from what is currently proposed at UR4 to neighborhood residential.
Okay, is there a motion?
Gotcha. I'd like to move that.
Okay, second.
Seconded.
Okay, motion seconds been made. Any discussion?
Just real quick, obviously we had, I think, constituent request on this largely. Seems like 19th is a hard boundary, but you're a good boundary to use. But obviously need to respect the neighborhood business zoning that pre-existed this. So hence the weird little cutout there that hopefully we'll have notes about. So 10 years from now, when our successors do this, they'll know why there's a weird little cutout there. Thank you.
Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes.
The next one concerns the Legion Division 2 subdivision, the Mount Baker something subdivision, and the Bridgeway, a portion of the Bridgeway plat. This is the area of North Broadway shown on the zoning map. There was a proposal to rezone and a request from some community members there, some residents of the neighborhood, to rezone this to neighborhood residential constrained. Neighborhood residential constrained is was a framework designed for areas that have limited access and potential issues with emergency egress, such as with a wildfire. The standards were 750 feet of road or more behind a single access point that could be vulnerable in an incident.
Adjacent to steep
And,
slopes and wooded areas.
And also some suggestion of steep slopes and wooded areas. This area of North Everett has a couple of access points. There's one issue with state law that I wanted to bring to the council's attention on this, which is a requirement as part of the middle housing law that all parcels that are in any areas historically covered by a covenant or deed restriction excluding racial minorities from owning property or living in the area, as known to the city at the time of the comprehensive plan update, may not be excluded from allowing middle housing. Middle housing is what is allowed by the neighborhood residential zone and what is not allowed in the neighborhood residential constrained zone, reflecting the constraints of those areas. It would be set at basically what is allowed now, 9,000 square foot minimum lot size. 2 accessory dwelling units would be allowed, but other than that, no duplexes and other types of middle housing. So under the middle housing bill and the state law shown on the screen here, we do have the areas in red here did have racially restrictive covenants on them. The Legion Park Edition Division 2 and the Bridgeway plat. These are old covenants that are not in effect anymore. They've been invalidated by the state Supreme Court. And they're not in effect anymore, but nonetheless, they did exist in the past. I think in the 1940s is when those were established. And our read of state law is that we could not prohibit middle housing on those parcels that are in red. There is some area, so this is back to the area that had been discussed for neighborhood residential constrained. I will point out that there is a small area that is not covered by a prior racial covenant that does overlap with that area. That is my context around that potential request.
Thank you. Do we have any council action
Yes,
potentially?
Right. I'd like to make a motion that the area shown on the zoning map on what we see as slide 13 be labeled as neighborhood constrained, and happy to speak to it if there's a second.
Okay.
Second.
Right. Councilman.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously, that whole issue that affected Madrona, I'd have a hard time explaining to these constituents exactly why it differs. I understand, as Alice Ann mentioned, the Madrona issue, but I think this area has some steep slopes. Maybe it'd be possible to get people in from the golf course. I think the roads in this part of the development are even narrower than in the area to the south, where we're constrained by state law from labeling that neighborhood commercial, but anyhow, that's my rationale. Thanks.
Councilor Fossey.
Yeah, the roads there are kind of wacky. And the entrance points are constrained, so I get it. We need to comply with state law, and so that one particular area that is allowed, I appreciate you being mindful of this and bringing it up so that we're compliant with that, so we can adjust it accordingly.
Councilor Bader.
Thanks. I just comment though that, I mean, as Yori pointed out, I think actually, and David Holm, I know better, but I think it was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling set over 75 years ago that made it states couldn't enforce these. So even outside this area, I doubt there's anybody who bought in this area anticipating they could ever enforce one of those covenants. So my sympathies to residents in the rest of the area that we might not be able to deal with neighborhood constrained, but that's the way the state law is written. So, and I just want to, thanks.
Thank you. All right. So any further discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo,
I don't understand this well enough. I'm going to abstain.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, so before us, we have a comprehensive plan that has been amended. Is there any other new action?
Thanks. Sorry, Council
Yeah.
President. Just that one issue regarding inclusionary zoning. And so out of respect for the fact that all but one of our planning commission members urged us actually to remove this, I'd like to propose a study reporting on the impacts of inclusionary zoning on affordable housing and housing affordability in the areas to which it applies. That would be come back to us or in 2027 or a memo or whatever informal language we used on the other motion about asking for giving us information back about the impacts.
So is this a motion to amend one of the chapters in?
I don't know
think-
exactly.
Yeah, that would be in the comprehensive plan which you passed, but you can of course provide information and requests to us about asking for a report on the impacts of inclusionary zoning.
I apologize, but I asked that question before we got into this, if that should come into item 10 or item 11. I thought I was being told it was supposed to be in item 11.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on the action connection. I think, David, what do you think about either some part of the ordinance? A recital would be less firm in a section or an enacting clause. This is, I can remember some other ordinances that have a request or a requirement for a report back.
You can do that just as a standalone motion outside of the ordinance that council asks all the time for reports within certain timeframes on various things.
Happy to do it. They're practical and avoid too many.
Okay, could we do like in a new business then, or do you want to try to adapt to this?
I guess whatever is easiest on staff at this point to bring that request back.
You can make a motion to amend the ordinance to add something at the end of add a new section 4 that asks for a report, or you can just wait and vote on this and then the staff will get you the report no matter what happens.
I understand. I just don't want to have you guys jumping through hoops and would prefer the easiest route to make this happen for you all, since I apparently didn't get on the boat when it was moving away from the.
It's just, this is a question for legal. If I commit, if we commit tonight to reporting back to council in X amount of time, isn't this meeting being a public meeting and me stating that we will report back enough of a document that will happen?
I would probably at least want a motion requiring administration
Right.
to make that report.
Okay, so if you're okay, we'll just wait until after, we'll come up with a new motion and not, right now we're working on amendments on action item 11, so. Okay, we have a potential action item on number 11, Councilman Tui.
Yeah, I have just one thing, and we had an email conversation with Yurik about the hospital expansion. When that happened, the Kobe Providence, they had promised the neighborhood that they would not allow clinics I don't know what the boundaries were, but that was part of when they took out some of the housing there. And I don't know if you found anything on that, what it might have been.
Yeah, there were, I want to say as a policy in the what was the comprehensive plan that we had up until an hour ago, that said, do not cite new clinic uses around Providence, paraphrase. We had discussed a limitation on the neighborhood commercial framework for clinics in that area. I forgot to put that in the slide, my apologies. We could add, we discussed boundaries that were, I think, Lombard to Grand and 10th to 14th.
Yeah, it was Hoyt to Lombard.
Hoyt to Lombard, 10th to 14th.
Yeah.
So we could add that text to under allowed neighborhood uses. Number 3 is clinic, could say clinic, comma, except between in the area bounded by 10th, 14th, Hoyt and Lombard.
And that would work for me. So I will make an amendment for that.
Making a motion
A
to amend it?
motion to amend it. yes.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, could you kind of just restate that? When you get it up?
So after the word clinic, add the words except in the area bounded by Hoyt, Rockefeller, Lombard.
Yeah.
Let me start over. Except in the area bounded by Hoyt, Lombard, 10th and 14th.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes, Councilmember Fosse.
I'd like to amend. Okay, thank you. I'd like to amend 19.38.030 about non-conforming structures, adding that a detached accessory structure that has non-conforming setbacks may be demolished and a dwelling unit may be built in the same location, provided that the new accessory structure meets current building code requirements and the location of the non-conforming accessory structure is certified by the planning department.
Oh, second.
Second.
Okay.
And I can explain.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Fosse.
It's for the dadoos where we have existing garages. They were always put up to the alley and the lines. And we fixed it on the alley side, but when it comes to the other boundaries, but making sure that that the structure is still certified by the planning department and it still meets building code requirements. It makes it so you can do those mother-in-laws, where you have existing footprints and stuff like that already. And that's for the old, building, not just creating willy-nilly new dadoos on grass where there wasn't a previously permitted structure.
Okay, Councilmember Zarlingo.
Just a question. Is there any concern there about, are we okay with fire and emergency access on those kinds of things if they're close?
The building has already existed, so the building's already there.
We were assuming that if the building already exists and hasn't been seen to be a hazard, that we're in good shape. Okay.
Any more discussion? Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, before us, we have a comprehensive plan as amended. Is there any new action to go forward on our item number 11? Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes, okay.
Before you close, I just want to say a couple of words about our planning team. They have done incredible work over the last few years, and really York is extraordinary as we saw today, where he can like cite this by verbatim, by heart. And we took the extra step of actually doing the periodic update at the same time. Many jurisdictions didn't do that. And so when folks have asked, why has it taken the city of Everett so long? It's because we did everything all together right now, which is an extraordinary body of work. And I just want to thank York, Alisan, and your entire team for this, and obviously thank the council as well, but really kudos to our staff team. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Bader.
Yes, so now I'd like to make a motion that we ask that the city would do a study reporting on the impacts of inclusionary zoning on affordable housing and housing affordability by July 2027.
Councilor Ryan seconds.
Okay, motion seconds made. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes, thank you, council members. Thank you for all your hard work. I know lots of reading and listening, and really appreciate it. Mayor and your staff, thank you very much. With no further business, meeting's adjourned.